That's all about basketball now, I see. Now that we've got the Super Bowl behind us, basketball, baseball starting soon, of course, and we'll start talking about some baseball in a couple of weeks as spring training gets underway in about 10 days or so. But listen, going to feature a lot of good games today. What, three big games on Saturday's schedule, all from teams that are going to be challenging for a potential deep run, at least, Sweet 16 run, at least, if not a potential Final Four run in college baskets. But wanted to get your thoughts on the Super Bowl before we move on. You know, it was good for me. I enjoyed it. And I really had no problem with the boring blowout. I was very happy to have a blowout and not have to sweat anything. But I got to tell you, from watching that game, Patrick Mahomes made no on-field adjustments. And I'll jump into that a little bit more after you talk a little bit about the game. You've got coaches who are making X's and O adjustments, and then you've got a quarterback who's got to know when it's a situation where what we prepared for isn't working, and we got to start manipulating the defense a little bit. He didn't do that at all.
Yeah, I think the story for me is that Philadelphia defense. And you can say what you want about Jalen Hurts and how great he played, et cetera, which is fine. But in reality, this reminds me sort of what the Ravens did, when they won with Trent Dilfer. And I'm not saying Jalen Hurts is Trent Dilfer,
right?
But that Ravens defense, they after they lost in a couple of years ago, they really drafted a ton of defensive players.
Sure.
And all that defensive youth is the reason why I think Mahomes and Andy Reid's a brilliant coach. He's a Hall of Fame coach, but they couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
And that's because that Philadelphia defense was just so nasty, dude. Just nasty. And they got after him pretty hard. And that's the same thing what the Tampa Bay Buccaneers did. Remember when they beat Patrick again, it's when you have strong defensive lines is how you beat Mahomes. And I think what we witnessed was something sort of sad because it really should have been the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah.
I think the Bills would have given them a much better game to the Eagles. So, I think what we saw there was a couple things. And I think this is the beginning of the end for the Chiefs. I believe the dynasty is over. I don't see them coming back. I think the Bengals next year will be a team to be looked after. I think you're going to be really hungry with the Bills with Allen's window closing. I think the Ravens are going to be back. I think the Chargers will get a little bit better in Harbaugh's second year. And so I think you got a lot of other teams. I think the Seahawks might be a little bit better. I think you're going to see a lot of people. I think the dynasty, as far as the Chiefs is concerned, I mean, the happiest person probably in the building is Tom Brady.
Yeah.
So no one's going to be talking about some dynasty, and it's over for the Chiefs, in my opinion.
Yeah, when I watched Mahomes, first of all, before the wild card game, so in between that week at the end of the regular season before the playoffs, I was doing a bunch of shows, and I said I think Philadelphia is going to represent the NFC, and I thought it would be either Buffalo or KC. And it was kind of funny because I thought if Buffalo would have got there, I would have been on Buffalo against Philly, just the matchups, the way things match up. But I had, we talked about it last week, a couple of weeks ago, that with Philly being against Kansas City in the Super Bowl, that I really felt that KC was just outgunned the defense, as you mentioned. And the one thing about that defense is that they didn't have to gamble. It's not a defense that has to blitz. And I think they blitzed a grand total of 3 times. I know a lot of people are saying they never blitzed, not even once. They actually did 3 times. That was it. So they don't have to gamble on defense, yet they get to the quarterback. And the biggest difference for me between Brady and Mahomes, and I hope people don't take this the wrong way because, Mahomes is great. He's an elite, no doubt about it. He's one of the top 3 in my lifetime. But the reason I like Brady better than Mahomes was on display because, like, if you watch the Falcons up 28-3 over New England, nothing was working offensively for the Patriots. Brady snapped out of it. He goes, we're going to start doing some different stuff on offense. We're going to do, little dump off passes to our running backs. We're going to throw some screens, some short passes. We're going to junk what got us here, and we're going to start having to manipulate the defense a little bit. And you didn't see that out of Mahomes. And he's great. I mean, he's a 10 out of 10. There's no doubt about it. But he falls just a bit short as far as the Brady argument is concerned, because we saw now twice what a defense shut down what KC wants to do. We saw it against, as you mentioned, Tampa Bay, and then now on Sunday against the Eagles. He doesn't have that in him to take over the adjustments in that situation and start manipulating the defense. And again, this is all relative. If I go out and have to start a team right now, I want Patrick Mahomes as my quarterback. So I don't want anybody to take this the wrong way. Like I think, all of a sudden he doesn't like Patrick Mahomes. Bottom line is he's got to learn how to manipulate when things aren't going his way, I would guess. I agree with you. I think they're, if Reed's around for 5 years and Mahomes is on the team for another 5 years, which he should be, they might get back 3 years from now, but I don't see them getting back next year. They got to get a new offensive line. They've got to find a deep wide receiver, somebody who can beat the defense. And they've also got to find a running back. And you don't just find that stuff in one-off season. So they won't be back next year, I don't think, but I think they got a chance maybe 2 more years down the road after that.
Yeah.
All those Super Bowls New England won, I see. Remember, they went a long time at times between Super Bowl appearances. So it's possible, but not next year.
Yeah, I think what we saw was Mahomes covering for a lot of holes for the Chiefs.
Right.
The Chiefs had a bunch of holes that he was covering for all year, and that was pretty obvious. And the GM for the Eagles is the one who really won the Super Bowl. And the GM for the Chiefs, obviously when you move left tackle, right, and you don't figure out a solution for that, so they never figured out a solution for that, and that's what really embarrassed them. And whereas the Eagles were just so deep.
Sure.
Just so deep. I mean, look, you got Saquon Barkley, you got Devontae, you have Heisman winners and incredible skill players across the board. I mean, they have defensive line skill, running back skill, elite skill, wide receiver elite skill. I mean, when they drafted Adams, when they picked up Barkley, it was over.
Sure.
And so that's what it was. And give them a lot of credit.
Yeah. So again, and I'm glad you mentioned that left tackle situation, because that had a lot to do with why Philly was able to dominate. The best left tackle was out for the season a while back and obviously hurt Kansas City. Other big news this week, and this was surprising to all of us, everybody, whether you're in the NBA or handicappers and bettors or just casual basketball fans, when the trade came down that Anthony Davis was headed to Dallas and Luka Doncic was headed to Los Angeles. I remember I got a text from another handicapper in LA, and I thought it was an early April Fool's joke. We didn't see it coming. They're about 17-1. I've seen as low as like 14-1. And it's Thursday night as we talked about this. I'm not on board with the Lakers challenging in the West. And I've heard a lot of people going, oh man, they got Luka now, they got LeBron, they're going to score, they're going to outscore teams. They have nobody inside. They really don't. Hachimura has had to step up his game. Wednesday night, I played him over 19.5 points and rebounds, and he got 22. He's having to take on that role. So they've gone small. So it's small ball from the Lakers. They're trying to rely on Hachimura for more minutes now that AD's gone. Luka's never in great shape, and right now he's not in good shape at all. I just think, maybe next year, if they can find somebody who can protect the paint, protect the rim, they might have a shot. But this team looks like going to be overvalued when the postseason starts in all likelihood, and we'll be able to take shots against them. I just don't see this team going deep, I see.
Yeah. Every time I thought the Lakers would do bad, JJ Redick somehow figures out solutions for this team. Obviously I believe there's better teams out West. But I got to tell you something. There is something sort of special about this team, in the sense that they destroyed the Celtics, remember, by 24 points or something at home. So I think the team to beat obviously is the Cavs, the Celtics, and you have
OKC.
You have Cavs, Celtics, Knicks, who I still think is phenomenal. And obviously you have like we talked about, the Thunder, the Nuggets are still there. But I think the Grizzlies are suspect at times. And I cannot believe the Lakers are 5th. You know what I mean? The Lakers usually trottle around the 8th and the 9th. I think something more important here, I'm not high on, the rest of the West, to be honest with you. The Clippers, T-Wolves, Mavericks, Kings, Warriors, they've all looked suspect. So pretty much you have a 5-way race, and the Rockets are suspect too. It's pretty much then Thunder, Grizzlies, Nuggets, Lakers.
The Rockets have fallen off the cliff a little bit of late.
They have. And it's not as wide open as it was last year, in my opinion. So, the Thunder's Grizzlies. And the Thunder, 44-9. Wow.
That's the team to beat as far as I'm concerned out West.
And then you have everything, and you have the East with the Cavs, Celtics, and Knicks, and everybody else, Pacers, Bucks, Pistons, Magic, have fallen off. So I think pretty much one of these 7 teams is going to win the title, right? It, Cavs, Celtics, Knicks, Thunder, Grizzlies, Nuggets, and maybe Lakers. But I don't know. I just don't. I agree with you. I think what gets them over the hump is probably going to be, and that Mark Williams trade. That
Yeah.
could have been nice. I think they had a nice domino lined up. They hit the home run with Luka. They fell short with Williams, and I know he didn't pass his physical, but the Lakers don't care. The Lakers are like, we still want him, so it's kind of funny.
I was one of the things I look at. We get to this point of the season in the NBA, and people start talking about who do you like, to be in the championship series. And there's one thing I always look for every year, and there was a good stretch of NBA champions that had to fit this prerequisite, if you will. It's top 5 in offensive efficiency, top 5 in defensive efficiency. The teams that were in the top 5 at both ends of the floor were winning championships like crazy. And it's still what I look for. And there's 2 teams out there. There's Boston in the East. There's Oklahoma City in the West. Only 2 teams that rank in the top 5 in both of those important categories. Cleveland's real close. They're top 5 on one end and like 7th on the other. So there are some teams that are close. But again, I mean, if you had to tell me right now that I had to put my money on it, it would be Boston OKC as far as the NBA finals are concerned. And Boston's got the best roster. The problem with Boston is they fall in love with the 3 sometimes, and they stick to it even when it's not going in. So anyway, but yeah, we might differ a little bit on the Lakers. I can't jump on board till they get somebody big in the middle who can protect the rim. I think AD was right before he got traded, and he said, we need that big man in the middle. Boom, he's gone. So then he gets injured, unfortunately. But college basketball Saturday, man, we got like 6 teams that we're going to talk about that all have a chance to go at least to a Sweet 16. I'm kind of fudging it there with my Creighton Bluejays getting to a Sweet 16 this year. Not their best edition. But 3 big games, and we're going to start with Houston and Arizona. This line's likely going to be around 2.5 in favor of the Cougars, the game being played in Tucson. The one problem I have with Houston, because I see as you watch them, they're men among boys every time they're on the floor, but they don't get to the free throw line. They're outside the top 300 in free throw attempt ratio, I should say. And you've got to be able to have a better free throw to field goal attempt ratio to be able to sustain some of these late season, 6 games in a couple of weeks like you have in March Madness. I think that might come back to haunt them. As far as this game is concerned, Arizona's got 7 losses, but they're still top 15 in most power ratings. They had a lot of losses early on in the season, coming off a loss to K-State. I think they're going to squeak this one out and knock off Houston here, I see.
Yeah, I can definitely see it because, you have a team here, and Houston, to their credit, has not lost a true road game. But then again, they have not also been challenged like this in a true road game. They did beat Kansas on the road, but I think that was more Kansas playing bad than playing well. And then, Arizona at the end of the day did beat Texas Tech at home. They beat BYU on the road, huge win. They beat Iowa State at home. They had some big wins, and they come off that Kansas State loss, which is going to tick them off to no end. So I think that when you look at this game, and I'm not even messing with the total in this game, I think it makes sense. I can see Arizona, and there's a few teams that have the feisty enough to pull this game off. And Arizona is a team that's going to be even more nasty next year. They got a whole bunch of guys coming back next year. And I think I think losing to Kansas State is going to be great for them. And remember, they also shot 2 for 22 in that game against Kansas State. That's bad. And they still lost by 3.
Yeah.
So as they come back home, they're going to be pissed off. And I think it's a good opportunity. And the funny thing is Kansas State shot 1 for 19 from 3-point land.
Yeah, they were like 3 for 41 between the 2 teams from the 3-point line. Crazy.
And they shot, like 1% almost, like it was 5%, I should say. And 143 points were still scored. So it's nuts. No, I like Arizona. I agree with you.
I like the bounce back here. I like the way they looked against, as you mentioned, Iowa State. That was a huge win, and they basically owned that game for most of the game. Auburn, Alabama. We head down to your favorite conference, the SEC. This should be a very, very good matchup to watch. I cannot wait to be glued to the set for Auburn, Alabama. Jonai Broome makes Auburn a contender, or gets them over that next, hump to make them a Final Four and championship contender if he stays healthy, and no reason to think he won't. He had some issues earlier this season. And as far as Alabama is concerned, man, they score so many points and they play at such a quick pace, I see, that I don't think Nate Oates and his team gets enough credit for the defensive metrics. And it's because they're involved in 105 to 90 type of games. It reminds me, only because of the amount of points scored and given up, it reminds me of what UNLV was under Tarkanian, because they would win these games 108 to 90, and everybody would look at the 90 they gave up, and I'm like, check out the metrics. They're nasty on defense. I'll just jump in right now and turn it over to you. I like Alabama in this game over Auburn to pull the, I guess you would say, very minor upset.
Yeah, I don't think people, and what's funny is, people are going to, first of all, Alabama's favored in this game by 1.5 points. And second of all, I'm more impressed. I agree with you that Alabama, they have some monster wins to their credit so far this year. And I think winning at Texas by 23, not looking ahead to Auburn, is impressive. And I think winning at Kentucky is impressive. And they beat Houston as well, and they beat Illinois by 13 as well. And that early loss to Purdue, I think, was good. And if you look at Auburn, what you got to ask yourself is their game against Georgia was sketchy. They didn't have all their true players, but they were sketchy. They did barely beat Texas by 5 on the road. This is a team that lost to Duke by 6 on the road. They lost to Florida at home. They did bounce back against Vandy, but it was a little sketchy, right? It was 32 to 34 at the half. And it also, they had to, Vanderbilt also shot 3 for 17 from 3-point land. I think Alabama is the better team actually for this game. I think eventually Auburn will get their revenge because Pearl will coach them up. And Alabama has a little revenge from losing to them by like 15 points last time they met. So I like Alabama.
Yeah, we're together on this one. I like Alabama too. We're going to head to the Big East here. Creighton at St. John's. Johnny's probably going to be about a 6.5 point favorite. It was funny yesterday on Wednesday because I do a weekly Wednesday VSiN show on Mad Dog Radio, and we were talking about St. John's. And they were saying, man, you gave them out at 45, 50 to 1 a month ago. They're all the way down to like 20 to 1 in some spots. And I was making this big deal about, Rick Pitino. I think you and I have talked about it before, that St. John's big weakness is 3-point shooting. So Pitino, being the great coach that he is, says, we're not shooting threes. So what do they do on Wednesday night? They go out and they shoot 37 threes. They only make 11 and they get beat by Villanova. But I was looking at the box score. You got to be kidding me. 37 threes. I think that gets them back on track. It gives Pitino something to yell a little bit in the locker room to his players in practice. Creighton's not what they used to be. Or I shouldn't say that. I should say that a different way. They're not as good as they were the last couple of editions. Kalkbrenner's a big guy in the middle. He can get you 20 and 10. He's also kind of quiet. He doesn't get fierce on the floor and take it to the rim when he's got his chances to do so. And I think this team is just a little bit off because it's basically Ashworth at point, Kalkbrenner inside, and then they have to rely on somebody else to be that third player to make a big deal when Creighton plays. They beat St. John's 57-56 in Omaha. I like St. John's to bounce back and get some revenge here. I'm not a big revenge guy, but boy, I think Pitino's going to have his team ready to go for a somewhat slow Creighton Bluejay team, I see.
Yeah, I mean, St. John's, when they played them last time, only had 6 free throws. And they shot 2 for 9 from 3-point land. And, that was a game that was a very low-scoring game. I think this will be the exact opposite of that game. I think not only will this be a game higher scoring, but I also we agree that, I love the fact that they come off that loss, and they haven't lost back-to-back games all year. So that's something important, too. And, of course, that Villanova game was, 37 threes. They shot more threes than they did twos, which is rare for St. John's. They shot 50% more threes than twos, actually. They went 11 for 37. They shot 24 field goals. But you also had to have Villanova shoot 60% from the field and 46% from 3-point land to beat them.
Sure.
So, I understand that Creighton comes off a loss at home, so they're going to be motivated too. But, man, that's going to be a mad St. John's team. And, Creighton is still, like you're saying, is outside the top 240 in turnover margin, outside the top 300 in offensive rebounds. St. John's is top, 80 in turnover margin and top 15 in offensive rebounds. And you get them with revenge and you get them off of a loss. Yeah, I'll take St. John's.
And I like revenge when you have those kind of things that you just mentioned. They didn't play well. They didn't shoot well. They only had 5 or 6 free throw attempts. I know in the Big East, there's not a whole lot of fouls called. And Creighton, I think, is number 1 in the country in the least amount of personal fouls called on them. But again, you come within a point on the road in a fantastic home environment like Creighton has, and come within a point with the stats not going your way, it calls for a good, decent revenge spot. And this is going to sound funny to some people who are kind of new to all this stuff. I was actually glad to see St. John's lose on Wednesday night, feel better about coming back with them and the way they lost on Saturday against Creighton. Any closing thoughts before we wrap this one up?
No, I enjoyed I enjoyed this video. I think that this is good. I think this is kind of what people want. And the Super Bowl, it's kind of a I don't want to call it a morning once the Super Bowl is done, but I think it's a lot of fun. Like, we get excited about March Madness. We get excited about the NBA. Baseball is just around the corner,
Mm-hmm.
So this is a fun time for us, but our jobs never end, dude, does it?
Yep. It's every night. It's about 360 out of 365 days a year. So I tell people all the time, if they tweet me or if they ask me on radio, how do I get into the business? I say, first of all, can you work 360 out of 365? Because that's about what you're talking about for the most part. And it doesn't end. It's never ending. It gets a little bit easier time-wise in the summertime, but certainly handicapping each and every day. I think we'll probably incorporate maybe an NBA game or two next week also, along with some college basketball, everybody. So be sure to tune in to White Chocolate on February 19th and 20th of next week, and we'll chat a little bit more about the upcoming games as we get closer to the conference tournaments and to March Madness. For IC, I'm Scott Spreitzer. We're DocSports.com. Let's put them in the win column, everybody.